Hello, my dears. It's Katie, and I have a Sasha because she's missed me all day since I've been at work. But I am here today to once again do something a little bit different. So, because things are chaotic and I don't have as much time to film anymore, and I have a lot of tags and things building up, I am going to do something that I saw on my very dear friend Vendy's channel, where she kind of does a bunch of tags in one video just to kind of get them out there. And I love that idea. So Vendy, I'm sorry, I am borrowing this from you. But the one thing that I'm doing a little bit differently is I'm trying to theme my tags. So ones that have similar concepts or ideas around them, I'm theming them around that. So today's is just, I hate to say like bookish, but that's the best explanation I've got for you guys. I'm doing 3 of them. So today the first tag that I'm doing is called the keyword tag, and it was co-created by Ben at Positive Writer, Bella at The Bookish Badger, and Q at Professor Q's College of Books. Okay, so the next one that I'm doing is the Dilemmas of a Book Nerd tag, which I was tagged in by Emma from Emma Rosen Books. And I can't quite find a creator for this one, at least when I last looked, I couldn't. So if you guys find the creator, let me know. And then the third one that I'm doing is called the Book Snob book tag. And let's see, does this one have creator? Yes. And this one was created by Tia and all of the books. And I'm so excited to do all of these. I wasn't tagged in most of them. I was only tagged in the one by Emma. But I saw other people doing them and I thought they were really fun. So I figured, why not? So starting with the keywords tag. 1, genre. What is your favorite genre? So you guys might be thinking that my favorite genre is fantasy because of all of the stuff that is on my channel. And you would theoretically be correct. But the even more correct answer is that I don't have a favorite genre. I have multiple, and it all depends on what my mood is. Primarily, I'll say it's fantasy, but I also love historical fiction and the classical canon. So I don't technically know, but one of those 3, depending on my mood, will definitely be the proper choice. 2, author. What author will you always read? I mean, if you guys have watched my channel, you guys know who my favorite authors are. I absolutely adore Robin Hobb. I have not read all of her books, but I have read her entire Realm of the Elderling series, as well as her novellas and short stories. But I have not yet read the Trader Sun cycle, and then I haven't read her Megan Lindholm novels. But a lot of them I found out recently are out of print. So I don't know if I'll ever get to read those, but I definitely love Robin Hobb. Also love J.R.R. Tolkien. I will literally read every single Tolkien book that has been published. At one point or another, I will get to them all. And then 3 is time period. What time period do you love to explore? Anything ancient, medieval, or Renaissance. Those 3 time periods, if it's mentioned on a book somewhere, or if someone tells me that it takes place in that period, I will read it. Usually immediately, but also just my TBR is long, so I'll just probably add it to the list, but it will get read at some point if one of those 3 time periods is discussed. But I do also love like World War I, World War II time period. I'm pretty much down to read any time period if the story and the blurb on the back intrigues me enough. However, ancient, medieval, Renaissance will always be my go-tos, no matter what. 4, setting or location. What settings are your favorite to read? I mean, once again, it's the medieval setting. I am just complete trash for it. And I really wish there was more Italian Renaissance books out there because that time period is so rich and so much could be done with it. but I haven't heard of anything that's been done with it ever. So please give me more Italian Renaissance novels, please. Preferably if they have fantasy in them, like, please. But yeah, just once again, it's the same as time periods. If it takes place in an ancient, medieval, or Renaissance time in any country, odds are I'll read it. I just love it so much. 5, plot point. What plot point will always make you pick up a book? Anything with ships. Sailing ships. Magical ships. You name it. If it's on the water and it is a ship or a pirate thing, I'm pretty much going to dig on it. But I also love assassiny things. Those two are definitely high on my list for things that I love. But like pretty much if it mentions ocean, ship, I'm there. 6, character trope. What types of characters do you adore? The angsty, tortured, tragic backstory types of characters. If it's a happy character, like I love them as a side character, but if they're like a happy protagonist and or their issues get resolved easily, I tend to get bored more easily. So give me a good old-fashioned tortured, sad, tortured protagonist. Like, I'm all about that. It's probably why I love Fitz so much, because he is the epitome of the sad, tortured protagonist. My poor small son. 7, relationship trope. What relationships do you love to read? All kinds. Familial relationships, friend relationships, romantic relationships of all different sorts. I'm just garbage for character relationships of any kind. Like Fitz and the Fool's relationship in ROTE, one of my all-time favorite relationships to read about in every form. Lord of the Rings, love that friendship across the board. I just love everyone's interactions in that book. Familial relationships, love the Weasley family from Harry Potter. I just am all about relationships, no matter what kind they are. I just love them so much. Okay, 8, cover. What type of cover is guaranteed that you will gravitate towards it? I actually did a whole video on my eye candy covers kind of a thing that I did, and I'll link that up above for you guys. But basically, if it is painted or has intricate designs on it and not people or portraits on it, and it's colorful, I will pick it up and it'll be great. And I love that. So definitely love me a good old-fashioned painted / artistic cover. Now moving on to the second tag, I'm doing the Dilemmas of a Book Nerd tag. Dilemma 1, book storage. How do you store and organize your books? I clearly have shelves, but I also do occasionally store my books in boxes, depending on a lot of different factors that are going on. Like these books, all of these books, for the last, 2+ years have been in boxes because of pending trying to sell our house, move thing, whatever. But ultimately we just got sick of it. So I put them all out on shelves now, and I am very, very happy about it. Dilemma 2, tracking. How do you keep track of what you have read and what books you own? So this is something that actually changes quite drastically. I've gone through so many different methods of how I keep track of my books and whatnot. I've done spreadsheets, I've done lists, I've done everything you can possibly think of. Now I primarily use 2 things. I use Goodreads to track a lot of stuff, and then I also use this app called Bookshelf, and it's great. Both of them are great. I think I finally figured out a great way to inventory. I'm really liking the way I keep track of my books because I do both ebooks and physical books. And it's just nice because bookshelf, you can create different shelves. So I've done it for all of the family members. So I have a shelf for my mom and a shelf for my dad and a shelf for me. And then we have like a family shelf on there. And then I do it for each of our ebooks because we all have e-readers too. And then on Goodreads, I keep track of my read, to be read, of course, currently reading, things of that sort. So I just have a nice balance for like, I use Bookshelf primarily for the books that I own, and then Goodreads to keep track of what I'm reading, what I have to get, and whatnot. So it's a nice combination of the two. Dilemma 3, borrow. Do you lend your books out? I used to, but I don't really do it much anymore for a couple of reasons. One, all of my friends live all over the country and some in foreign countries, and so it just makes it harder to lend them things. Second, I have had a lot of experiences where when I lend out a thing, I never get it back, or I constantly have to bother them about the book because I've never gotten it back. So I just try not to lend things out much anymore. Also, because I do primarily read things now on an e-reader, it's harder to lend them out because not everyone I know has an e-reader. I mean, to those who do, I can, because for a lot of books, there's like this sharing system thing that you can do. But for the most part, I don't really lend them out anymore. Dilemma 4, buying. How do you buy or acquire your books? Well, that depends. Most of the buying I do is on Amazon because I do have an e-reader. I have an Amazon Kindle. And in order to get Kindle things, you need to get them through Amazon. However, I do occasionally go to the bookstore or buy through Book Depository. All of my ROTE books are from the Book Depository, and I had a good experience with it. But if I do buy a physical book, most of them I will get through Amazon. And occasionally I do go to a bookstore in my area, whether it's Barnes & Noble or Barbara's bookstore. That's cool. But a lot of the books that I get these days are actually gifts. So birthday, Christmas, whatever, I'll ask for books and I'll get them in some form or another. But I'm more selective with what I ask for if anyone asks me for what I want. But I also have a friend who sends me books because she has them. So then she'll just send them to me. And so we share our libraries oftentimes, which is really, really nice. My library is weird, so I don't tend to use it as often. I'm looking into maybe starting to use it more, but we'll see if that actually works out. Dilemma 5, comments. How do you respond to the quote, "How do you read so much?" comment or similar comments? Fun fact about me, I don't get comments like that. To most booktubers, I'm actually an incredibly slow reader and I don't read as much as most other booktubers. Like some people I talk to have read like 15 to 30 books in a month and I'm like, how? The maximum I've ever read in a month is 10. So it's just not something that happens to me. But if it were to happen to me, I don't know what I would tell them. Because, everyone lives a different life and has a different timetable that they're working with and different types of jobs and school pressures and whatnot, that what works for one person probably won't work for another person. I mean, you can give all the tips that you want for how you do it. And if a person sees those tips, they can try and borrow them and take them and use them or try them out. But I personally don't see the point in imparting what I do onto someone else because, I don't know, as I said, everyone's very different. Their reading styles, their reading abilities, their reading tastes, their times, their read speed. So, yeah. don't really have much of an answer for that one. Dilemma 6. Next book. How do you pick your next read? It depends. So when I was in school, I literally had a list, and I was very, very rigid about how I would pick my next read. I was like, okay, I'm reading this now. I must read this next, whether I'm in the mood for it or not. Because otherwise, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't read anything. But now, and when I was younger, I'm a little bit more flexible because I am a mood reader by nature. So I just really like having that flexibility again. I've actually started to do readathons because it's still having a structure while also being able to mood read, because I like month-long readathons if I can find them. And if the prompts are flexible enough, then I can make it work. So usually it's just depending on whatever piques my interest at any given time. But it's not like I have a set TBR to read unless I'm buddy reading something with somebody. And even then, a lot of the people that I buddy read with are a little bit more flexible with how they want to go about things, which is really nice because that fits with me really well. So I don't know how I exactly pick, but most of the time it's just based on what I'm into at the moment. Dilemma 7, travel. How do you pick what books you bring with you on vacation? Well, first and foremost, it'll depend on what kind of trip I'm going on. So if I'm going to the beach, I definitely want to have some kind of mystery or thriller or historical fiction to bring with me, because that's kind of the books that I tend to like to read on those kinds of trips, along with espionage. Those kinds of books are just kind of like the perfect beach read for me. If I'm going on like a European adventure, I'll bring usually one book because our days are usually packed, and I don't bring a lot of stuff with me because I know they're going to be packed and I know I'm going to be exhausted. So it's just kind of whatever I'm feeling. But also I tend to like to bring historical fiction or like just easy reads with me when I'm traveling, because if I were to bring like a big chunky fantasy with me, I just wouldn't be as invested in it. I wouldn't be as immersed in it, and I would be just not focused enough to read something like that. So I tend to want something that's a little bit easier to digest. Like, I've read a lot of Dan Brown novels on vacation. Like, I brought Angels and Demons with me when I went to Italy the first time with my parents back in 2008. And then this last time that I was in Italy, I finished up Inferno right before I went. So I just tend to like to read novels like that. This is like historical fiction mixed with mystery, mixed with something. So yeah, those are the kinds of books that I tend to like to bring. But once again, it all depends on my mood. But those are the genres I tend to gravitate towards for that. Dilemma 8, annotate. Do you write or highlight or mark up your books in any way? No, I do not. When I was in high school, I was forced to annotate, and I hated it. I hated it so much. I was like, you know what? It'll take me long enough to read this thing that if you force me to annotate it and you're doing annotation checks in it, you're going to make me want to read it even less than I am at this given moment. And it was just not a good time. Hated it so much. So yeah, no, not a fan of annotating. However, one thing that I am starting to do with my favorite books, I have them in physical copy, and I am, quote, garbage. So literally what that means is that I'm taking tabs and I'm just tabbing where my favorite quotes are, because I just want to be able to find them easily. Don't know if I'm going to actually like it or if it's something that I'll continue doing, but I figured I'd try it out and see how it works out. But yeah, that's about the only kind of annotating that I do. Dilemma 9, new or backlist. What do you prefer, new releases or backlist books? Both. It really depends. Once again, I mean, I primarily read backlisted books. I'm not gonna lie. I don't typically have time to read new releases because I am so consumed by all of the things that are out already. But there is an occasional period of time where I will pick up a new release. I think I did like 2 or 3 this year, and that's really unusual for me. I just don't tend to do that. I'm always reading books way, way, way after everyone else. So it's a struggle, but I like to sometimes have a nice balance. Like I do read like at least one new release every year, but primarily I read backlisted books just because it's what I have on hand and I feel like I should read the things that I have already. Dilemma 10, sequels. Do you read books as they are released or wait for an entire series to be published before reading one book? Depends on the series. Primarily, I wait for the whole thing to be done because by the time I even know about it or have heard about it, the entire series is published and done anyway. Like ROTE, the last book came out, a year before I got to the last part of the series. So it really depends. But like, for instance, Harry Potter, I read those as they were coming out. It was agony waiting between books, but I did it. And then also with Winter Night Trilogy, I was done with book 2 before book 3 came out. So it was just this constant, I'm either catching up or I'm so close to being like right behind it that it's, as I said, it does depend on the series. But most of the time, with the way that I read, I don't get to a series until it's finished anyway. So I'm probably going to say wait until everything's done just because of the way that I get through everything. And those are all of the questions for that tag. And the last tag I'm doing for you guys today is the Book Snob Book Tag. First question is, adaptation snob. Do you always read the book before you see the movie? No. As we've already discussed previously, I am a slow reader. So if I don't get to the book before the movie, I'll probably see the movie first. Does it always color my view of the book? No, but sometimes it does. But yeah, I am not a book movie snob that much at all. 2, format snob. You can only choose one format in which to read books for the rest of your life. Which one do you choose? Physical books, ebooks, or audiobooks? Ooh, this is an interesting one. And I actually might surprise some of you with this. So I am not an audiobook person at all. So that one's out the window. So between physical books and ebooks, I'd probably say ebooks. And you're probably like, Katie, blasphemy of BookTube. Chill. The reason I am picking ebooks is because you can carry an entire library with you. And everyone always argues, but it feels better when you're holding a book in your hand and whatever. Yes, in an ideal world, I would say that's fine. But in terms of mobility and just having everything you want at your fingertips, ebooks are the way to go. They're also cheaper and more efficient. So while I love the aesthetic of physical books on my shelf and in my house and all of that jazz, realistically, if I had it my way, I would only keep the books that were so near and dear to my heart and so important to me that I just need to have them all the time, and then get all of the rest of the other ones in ebook format, because it's just easier that way. So that's my mini rationale on that. I will be doing a full discussion video on this at some point because I do feel like it's something that needs to be talked about. But yeah, I'm going to say ebooks. Ship snob. Would you date or marry a non-reader? Oof. I would say it depends. If I had other interests and they were like big interests like travel or something in common with someone, I'd say yeah. But if I didn't really have a significant interest with another person who also just happened to be a non-reader, I'd probably say no. So, I mean, reading is such a big part of my life, but there are other things that are just as important and big to me that if they weren't a reader but they loved travel or they loved certain movies or TV shows or doing certain types of activities, I'd say, yeah, I could probably get along with them pretty well. But if I didn't, and they, like, let's say they were, sorry guys, but if they were hardcore gamers and they only cared about sports and they didn't want to travel, they didn't read, they didn't like doing things outside the house or going on adventures with me, I'd say no, I don't want to date you. So it all depends on what other common interests I have with them. The answer is yeah, I'd probably date a non-reader, but it depends on what kind of non-reader they are, if that makes sense. 4, genre snob. You have to ditch one genre, never to be read again for the rest of your life. Which one do you ditch? Easy. Magical realism. We know this about me already. I really do not get along with magical realism. I just can't. I can't. I will not. I mean, there are other genres that I don't like either, but like magical realism is pretty high up on my list. I haven't read a magical realism book that I like, so welcome to my struggle. 5, uber genre snob. You can only choose to read from one genre for the rest of your life. Which genre do you choose? Probably fantasy, because there are so many things you can do with it. You have, the high fantasy, epic fantasy, historical fantasy, fantastical nonfiction. I mean, like, just across the board, there's just so much you can do with it, and it's just so nuanced, and there's so much to it that there are so many things that you can do with it. It's one of the more broad genres, if you will, because it does have so many lovely subgenres to explore. So I'd probably say that for the variety that it offers. 6, community snob. Which genre do you think receives the most snobbery from the bookish community? Ooh, tea. So that's interesting because I have a lot of friends from a lot of different sub-communities on Booktube. And yes, the YA community is one of the most widely snobbed communities across the board. However, I've definitely seen snobs for like nonfiction and poetry and adult fiction, and I mean, you see it across the board no matter what. Children's literature also gets hugely snobbed, I find. So does middle grade. I mean, it's just across the board. Everybody has some of it. So what is the most snobbed? Well, I think that'll depend on who you subscribe to, who you follow, who you are talking to, because everybody will have a different experience based on that. But the one that is most widely talked about is snobbing of YA. It's just one of those age range genre categories that is just the one that's the loudest, if you know what I mean. But in my experience, there are a lot of sub-communities that are snobbed. And I did a whole video about sort of this topic, and I'll link it up above if you guys are interested. It's kind of my Is Booktube Dying video. but I talk a lot about genres and inclusivity within those sub-communities, kind of a thing. So I kind of touch on this topic a little bit more there, but yeah, it really depends, once again. And last, snobbery recipient. Have you ever been snubbed for something that you have been reading or for reading in general? Sure. On BookTube, not necessarily, but in the real world, yeah. They might not have realized what they were doing or what they were, or how they were coming across and whatnot. But yeah, there are definitely some people who have said something about the fact that I am female and I am a huge fan of adult fantasy or just fantasy in general, because typically it's a quote male genre. So I've gotten a bit of that. I've gotten a bit of you should read more nonfiction stuff too, rather than all of that stuff about magic and whatnot from different people in my life. And that's kind of annoying sometimes. Like, we don't all have to read the same things. It's fine. And then another one that I've gotten is classics, like kind of from both ends. Like, Katie, you should read more classics. Or, Katie, why are you reading classics? Or why are you reading that specific classic? So, I mean, yes. Across the board I have at different times in my life. But, you know, that's where we're at. But anyway, those are all the questions for all of the tags, and I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you are watching this and you want to do them, by all means, feel free. Let me know down below if you decide to do it, and just say I tagged you so I can come and watch. But other than that, you guys know the drill. I have all of my social media links down below in the description. I have my Twitter, which is at A Sea of Tomes, which is the same as my handle here. And I have my Goodreads page, which is also linked down below, where you guys can go follow me, see what I'm reading, track my progress, and see my general superficial thoughts on things before I come and scream at you about them over here. And I also have my Ships and Fandoms page, which is also linked down below if you guys are interested. And I will catch you later in another video for you guys again soon. Bye!